Hello, I'm Dr. Bradley Alisea. I'm the head scientist at the Orthogonal Research and Education Lab, and today I'm going to talk about our 2022 year in review. So this is our 2022 year in review. This is 2022 in binary, as you can see, zeros and ones. And we have a number of social media channels. We have our GitHub repository, our YouTube channel, our LinkedIn site, our Twitter feed, and our main website at weebly.com. We also have a medium.com/orl-group, and that's where you can find some of the short blog posts I was telling you about. So one of our themes or one of our principles is global and virtual connectivity. You can see a map, Dymaxion map of the world, and we have these gray circles with lines connecting them. Those are locations of some of our collaborators, past and present, so we're present all over the world. We also have people who travel a lot, and one of the benefits of having a virtual meeting space is that we can connect from wherever we are. So recently, one of our collaborators was in East Africa. We've also had people traveling to other parts of North America and South America, and we have some of those examples shown here. We also have, at least I do, but there are other collaborators who do as well, use whiteboards, virtual whiteboards, to draw out ideas and flesh them out. You can see examples on the lower left. We also have collaborators and affiliate networks. So we have individual collaborators, but we have affiliate networks, and some of these are listed here. So we collaborate with CIRCE at the University at Albany, which is in New York State. CIRCE is an undergraduate research internship program. So we take students from the University at Albany and we sponsor them on research projects for a semester or maybe for 2 semesters. And they learn a lot about the research process. And as you'll see, some of these people have been able to create things, research artifacts that are benefiting their personal career. We also collaborate with NeurotechX. Morgan Howe is one of the chapter leads in San Francisco, and we plan to do more of that in the future. I'm myself and Daniela Cialfi are also involved with the Active Inference Institute. I also believe Brian McCorkle is involved, and we have a couple of people who have come into our community, at least as people who are lurking, as who are also involved with the Active Inference Institute. And the Active Inference Institute is an attempt to sort of get people involved participation-wise in active inference research. We also still continue our affiliation with the OpenWorm Foundation. So I'll be talking about the DivaWorm project, DivaWorm group. That's part of the OpenWorm Foundation. And we also have crossover events like Google Summer of Code students and other types of things that we coordinate with them. And of course, we also coordinate with Neuromatch Academy and Neuromatch Conference. We've participated in the Neuromatch Conference every time they've had a conference. This started in 2020 during the pandemic, but it's become a nice virtual resource for education and for research exposition. And then we collaborate with Plot Twisters, which is Jenny Jiang, who's I think she's either in the UK or in the US right now, and she's running this Plot Twisters group where they do a lot of things with narratives and video games and board games and designing things for those kind of experiences. So let's start with our year in review, and we'll start way back in March of 22. And this was one of the things that we did that month, which was to attend the EI workshop, or the Embodied Intelligence workshop. And so this was something that we did last year, and we continued on with our involvement this year. And we had 2 presentations from 2 members of the lab group, actually more members of the lab group. Angela Oitis, Jesse Parent, and myself were involved in this presentation on intelligence offloading and neurodevelopmental embodiment. And that was about a 15-minute talk where we went over intelligence offloading in agents and computational agents, but also the development of offloading and the role of embodiment in offloading. So intelligence offloading is where intelligence is augmented by things in the environment, and your capacity for remembering things or doing other types of cognitive tasks are enhanced by things in the environment. Then Jesse Parent, he put together a presentation, and this is actually something that I drew up, this diagram. And this diagram actually came together in a lab meeting that we had where this was drawn out on a virtual whiteboard and then made into a figure. But Jesse actually has this idea of terminologies and taxonomies of agent environment and metacognitive analysis. So he's interested in uh, looking for like common terms and a taxonomy for these agent environment interactions and some of these metacognitive issues that arise from that. So this is a figure of cybernetic regulation, and so this is something that we've been working on for a while. We're still kind of working out artifacts on this. So if you're interested, contact us. Then the next month in April, we had a hybrid event. This is the first hybrid event we've ever hosted in the lab. Actually, this was at the New York Celebration of Women in Computing. So it was a conference in place in Fort William Henry, New York. And there were attendees at the conference. But we also had attendees online. And a lot of the presenters presented virtually. And this was broadcast to the group at the conference. So this is something that we are trying to work out how to perfect this method. We've worked on hybrid events. I worked on hybrid events before last year, and they're difficult to pull off because there are a lot of variables that sometimes you can't control. But we had a nice set of presentations here. And the idea was to put together a smorgasbord of different topics that would be of interest to this group. So we had topics of data trusts and different issues in tech ethics and open source sustainability and a lot of different topics like that. So it was a very broad set of talks. I think we had 3 or 4 collaborators 5 collaborators participate in this. And it was a very good experience. And we'll probably be doing this again this year. Although we'll want to optimize for some of the things that we can optimize for. In July, I attended a workshop on network neuroscience, and this was in conjunction with NetSci 2022. So NetSci 2022 was a virtual conference. It was sponsored by people in Shanghai. It was supposed to be in Shanghai, but they had to cancel it because of COVID. And it was actually a nice opportunity to get to see what's going on in Chinese network neuroscience, but also brought together this group of collaborators on the left. This is the network neuroscience community, and this is an expertise network that they have constructed on the network neuroscience GitHub. So if you go, I think network neuroscience github.io, you'll find this map, and you can add yourself to this map, and it connects people with similar expertise. So it's a growing community. It's a fairly decent sized community. We had a number of talks on different topics. And I presented a poster on circuitous connectome modeling for developing sensory motor complexity. And this again is with computational agents. There's a poster overview of this on YouTube if you're interested. All of our talks and posters are generally hosted on YouTube. If you go to our YouTube channel, you'll find some sort of recording of this. So this is circuitous connectome modeling. This is assuming that connectomes develop in development in computational agents, not as this straightforward optimized process, but the circuitous process that allows for networks to become very convoluted in the process of growing into mature networks. And this is interesting because this property may allow for things like robustness and other types of properties that actually make them very much like the human brain or animal brains. In August, speaking of agents, we finally published our paper on developmental Bradenburg vehicles in a special issue of Artificial Life. This paper has been on the archive since 2020. We actually did a lot of the work in one of our working groups in 2019. And this is after some revisions and some other difficulties, we got this pushed through to this year. And so in August of 2022, this was published in a special issue of Artificial Life. We had if you should check out the special issue, it's a special issue on embodied intelligence. And in fact, it grew out of that embodied intelligence workshop involvement we had in 2021. So you can see that there's this continuity of things going on in one year to the next year, and artifacts are being produced not just in 1 year, but multiple years. And so this is an example of a development Bradenburg vehicle. You have something that maybe develops from a single unit or cell and differentiates different parts of a body, an embodied agent. That embodied agent then has a neural network that can be modified in development. The size and shape of the body are modified in this developmental process. And then you end up with Bradenburg vehicles that get trained on environmental stimuli. And if you engage this developmental process in different ways, you can end up with different behaviors. And so this paper is filled with all sorts of different approaches. We did a Hebbian learning approach. We did a collective agent approach. We did an approach involving genetic algorithms. And so this is definitely something to check out. We also have the open source code for all of these models in our GitHub repository. So in September, this was largely driven by Jesse Parent, our lab manager, and this was the We Robot Conference in Seattle, Washington, in the US. So this was held at the University of Washington, as you can see, he's standing in front of the W. And it was a very interesting conference with a lot of robotics demos, as you can see, and other types of technology demos. But you also had a focus on law and on policy and on tech ethics. So this is all focusing on tech ethics, law, policy, these sorts of things. And there were some very deep conversations there. And the talks had papers associated with them, so you could read virtually the papers. But this was definitely an in-person conference, and so Jesse was really excited about it. We talked about it, I think, in one of our Saturday meetings. So this was very good stuff. Jesse had 2 posters that he spearheaded for this. One on shared cognitive interfaces, and the other one involving storytelling and narrative. And so this is something that, again, I think we'll probably be doing in coming years if this is something that happens again. And so our involvement with Neuromatch continues, as I mentioned. In July, we had the Neuromatch Academy. So every year in July, there's the Neuromatch Academy. We usually have students who participate in it. I serve as a mentor to several working groups within the Neuromatch Academy structure. Usually your students have pods, and those pods have to do a research project over the course of like 3 weeks during the time that they're doing the summer school. And they usually have input from faculty mentors. And I'm a faculty mentor for the Cognitive Neuroscience summer school. So there's a Cognitive Neuroscience summer school and a Deep Learning summer school. And I'm involved in the Cognitive Neuroscience summer school, although this year Brian McCorkle took the Deep Learning summer school. And so we have people who are involved in both. Last year, we had someone who was a TA for the Deep Learning summer school. So it's definitely something that we're heavily invested in. And there's Jesse Parent with his Neuromatch Academy t-shirt. And this is something that we participated in. And we actually did some sort of it wasn't really a formal slow pod, but it was basically reviewing the materials that they make available online during our lab meetings over the summer. So people who weren't able to participate in the cognitive neuroscience or the computational neuroscience short course were able to get some benefit out of it. We also participated in the Neuromatch Academy in September, or the Neuromatch Conference in September. That's Neuromatch 5. And this is the 5th time they've offered this conference. And this conference was over a couple days. It was asynchronous, so you had talks sort of in North America's overnight period and North America's daytime period, so it was accessible to the entire world. They had their talks on Crowdcast, they had keynote talks and short talks, and then they had lightning talks, and this is where we were able to put 4 talks slotted into the lightning talk series: research methods and cognition studies, intuitionist math and neurophenomenology, semi-neuronal information processing, intelligence offloading. So these are all hosted on our YouTube channel, our lab YouTube channel, and you can check them out there. Interestingly enough, Brian McCorkle, who spearheaded the Intuitionist Math and Neurophenomenology talk, this has become somewhat of a resource for people. We just got a comment from someone who mentioned that this is something that people are looking towards, that there's like some buzz online about this. And it's just, like a 10-minute talk, I believe. So that's great for Brian. I think he's benefited from that quite a bit. So other 2022 achievements. So this is just a sampling of our achievements over the course of the year. But we've done other things as well. We had one of our collaborators, Ankit Grover, get a Best Paper Award in the Computational Intelligence track at the Computational Intelligence Society Conference in India. This is his slide for that event, and his talk on flipping the switch on local exploration, genetic algorithms with reversals. There's a conference paper associated with that, and that talk, that work, earned the Computational Intelligence Track Best Paper Award. We also had a physical meetup this year in Chicago, and this is Jesse, Avery, Lim, and myself, and we were all in Chicago in the Loop downtown there, and we were able to get together and meet on a Sunday afternoon and discuss some topics in research. Get to know each other a little bit more, because we're all virtual and we don't necessarily get to talk face to face very often. So that was very nice. It's actually the first time I ever met Jesse in person. I've never met Jesse in person before, nor Avery. So it was nice to do that. So our meeting, we have a lot of meetings during the year that are weekly or bi-weekly. So this is our flagship weekly meeting, the Saturday morning NeuroSim. This happens Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern time in the US and Canada, and wherever we have Eastern time. So South America has Eastern time as well. And we call it Saturday morning NeuroSim, but if you're in Europe or in India or in East Asia, it would be like Saturday evening or Saturday night NeuroSim. But anyways, this takes inspiration from the Saturday morning physics lecture series that they've had at the National Labs and at the University of Michigan. So this is why it's called Saturday morning NeuroSim. This is an example of what we do in that meeting. We talk about a lot of papers. We talk about, we give updates, we collaborate. It's a very fast-paced meeting, but it's about 2 hours long, so we have a lot of things going on during the time allotted. And so these are all posted on our YouTube channel, and tune in to check out specific meetings. We're in the process of sort of extracting pieces of them out and presenting them to people as content. So, if you're interested in a certain set of papers that we talk about or a certain topic, it's annotated. Some of them are not annotated to the time, but you can find out from the description of what we've talked about in different meetings. The next group is what we call the Cognition Futures Reading Group, and this happens Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So this is a little bit late for people in other parts of the world. In North America and South America, it's probably doable. Maybe in East Asia, if you want to get up in the morning and get involved in a reading group, that would be acceptable too, I guess. Everywhere else, it's like in the middle of the night, but that's sometimes the way we have to do these things. The Cognition Futures Reading Group, this is something that Jesse, I think, ran outside the purview of the lab previously, but now he's restarting it this past April. It restarted, and we've been really going strong ever since. We've done weekly, or sometimes we skip a week, but we usually do weekly meetings where we read we've, I think, gone through 2 books almost now, and we kind of present things that are related to some of the concepts that we come up with. So on the right, you see a tweet from Jesse where we were reading Fuchs' Ecology of the Brain, and we're looking at a certain concept, and Jesse's been a very good job of modeling this information in his Notion pages and other tools that he's used for this. So this is very impressive. But sometimes, like, I'll prepare some lecture or something to kind of give context to some of the things we've read. I gave a lecture on synergistics and coordination dynamics Actually, it's synergetics, I believe. But the point being is that we like to explore some of these topics at like a pace that helps people unpack them. And it's much easier to do that than to just read through a book and say, I get the book, and never talk about it with anyone. So sometimes we'll go through an entire chapter. Sometimes it'll take us 3 weeks to go through a chapter, but that's fine. That's the way we want to do this. So if you're interested in joining, please let us know. So these are the books that we've read on Becoming Aware by Depraz, Varela, and Vermesh, and Ecology of the Brain by Thomas Fuchs. And so these are more examples of our group. We have, usually it's a fairly small group of about 3 to 5 people, and we go through the book like this. We project, we share the screen and we read it collectively and go through it. And then this is an example of a mind map that was created for synergistics and coordination dynamics, sort of a historical map of how these ideas came to be. So it's very, very useful for the students to go through that. And then we have our Google Summer of Code involvement. So I didn't put this on our collaborators page, but this is an important part of our educational mission. We use Google Summer of Code, but this is the second time we've had Google Summer of Code in the Orthogonal lab. In the DevoWorm group, it runs usually every summer. We usually get selected every summer. This, in the Orthogonal lab, this is the second time we've done it. The last time was in 2019. So this year we actually sponsored 3 students, and the project topic was open source sustainability. So this kind of grew out of the stuff that was done for the New York Celebration of Women in Computing buffet, and it was then transformed into a Google Summer of Code project that people could apply for. And then we had 3 students. We had Hussein Ather, Himanshu Shogul, and Brian McCorkle. And they all did different projects. This is an example of one of Brian's collab notebooks that he prepared, where he was building a simple model of collective cognition. And we had meetings where we would do demos and updates and get into some readings on the topics. So basically every student would do their own version of this or tackle the problem in their own way. And then we'd come together once a week to discuss what we had done in the past week, what we were going to do, and then explore some things that were relevant to the work. And so I think that was very useful in from a pedagogical perspective to bring these things together. And so now we have 3 completed projects in this area, and now we're in the process of creating a portal for people to build models of their open source communities. So one of the problems in open source communities is that they're not sustainable. People create a project, they work on it for a while, and then it dies. That's very common. But we can take inspiration from computational social science and collective behavior, collective cognition, to maybe help people build better communities, or at least build more sustainable projects. And so that's what all these projects were kind of aimed at. Himanshu took a reinforcement learning approach. Brian took an approach involving active inference and other types of techniques like that. And then Hussein worked on some agent-based modeling that was somewhat unrelated to like the open source community aspect, but it's going to be useful for some of our other interests in terms of allostatic kinds and other things that other people have been working on. So this is a very fruitful summer for Google Summer of Code involvement. And I might add that Brian is also extending his work with a group of students from University at Albany, and they're working on this portal idea where you would be able to select models and use them. So then we have self-guided education. So we have all these projects. We have the tech ethics project. We have the organoids and bioevolution projects. We have our different AI projects. We have virtual reality, open source, all these different things that we're kind of building projects around and involvement. And so, how do you know things, especially across domains? How do you pick up enough to know what to do and know what's going on? Because we're very interdisciplinary in the main group. So if you hear people talk, we can veer from developmental biology to AI ethics over to some topic in computational science, and it's very hard maybe for people to follow. So one of the things we've done is we've developed a number of tools to help people navigate that. So one of them is the Brains, Behavior, and Complexity curriculum, which is where we have a number of different resources that people can utilize. And, those are, things that you can check out. There are short courses, there are different types, like we have Neuromatch, which is where you have course materials that are provided that kind of go over a course at a very high level, but still, guides you to other resources. So we have that. And this is on a number of topics: computational neuroscience, artificial life, complexity theory, and those sorts of things. Then we have our education and big unfinished ideas Discord, which I mentioned in the Discord video. This is a biocomplexity course that I've designed, but we're going to be adding other courses as time goes on. And so those courses will all be sort of in the Discord, so you'll be able to go through the materials. And then finally, we use things like mind maps, which are maps that allow us to draw out ideas and their heritage in terms of other ideas or in terms of key references. And it helps people really sort out a lot of these issues, because a lot of times people are bombarded with ideas and it's very hard to fix on any one or see how they're related. And so this gives you the big picture. So we have our internship program from the University of Albany. This was spearheaded by Jesse Parent. We get every semester, we're getting inquiries from students from the University of Albany and their internship program is pretty reputable. And this past spring we had a number of interns. We had 4 interns: Brian McCorkle, Amaris Arias, Samantha Carollo, and Sadhana Ahmad, and Sadhana Ahmad. And this is an example of 3 of their posts on our Medium. So we have our lab Medium, which I mentioned previously, and they gave posts on their interests. So Sadhana gave a talk on mapping artificial intelligence and its growth in human-centered fields. This is actually just a short blog post, but it was well written and prepared, and had nice images in it. So this was one example, her work on this on these mind maps. Samantha did one on understanding the empathy of artificial intelligence. So it grew out of her research interests in empathy and artificial intelligence. It's a very good review of that. It's, again, it's like a 4-minute read, an 8-minute read, and 9-minute read. These are not like huge papers, but they give, I think, a really nice overview at a very high level to some of these concepts. And then Brian had his Intuitionist and Neurophenomenology, which actually is accompanying his presentation at Neuromatch. So this is something that we're actively pursuing every semester. People come through this pipeline from the university into our group, and they produce, if they're successful, at the end they produce some set of artifacts related to research. So our current meeting schedule is that we have our Saturday morning Neurosim group, our Cognition Futures Reading group, our DevaWorm group, and our open source group. DevaWorm is Mondays at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Saturday morning Neurosim is Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Cognition Futures is Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And open source is Fridays at 12 noon. And some of these are accessible to the entire world. Some of them are not. But we do record some of these meetings, the DevaWorm and Saturday morning Neurosim meetings, especially. And so it gives everyone a chance to at least see what was going on. So you can work synchronously in the meeting or asynchronously outside of the meeting. And that's our philosophy, one of our philosophies. So I hope you enjoyed this overview. See you in 2023.